Well, welcome everybody to the continuation of our 18th year here at the Summer Gazebo Readings. I will remind everybody, if you need to use the facilities, please right across the street. The fire district is very, very accommodating. We appreciate their assistance with bathroom facilities. Snacks are in the back. If you're not on our email list, please sign up at the back table. There's also chances, 50, 25, 25. 25% of the pot goes to the Oceanside Kiwanis Foundation and the Friends of the Oceanside Library. 25% gets today, 25% gets rolled over to into our reading or grand prize at the end of August, and 50% goes to the club. Everybody should have a program. Does anybody not have a program? Anybody need a program? Okay, very important. On the back of the program are a list of our premium sponsors, our sponsors, and our program patrons. The generosity of these people are what makes this a success. Over the years, we have raised way over $100,000 to send underprivileged kids to summer camp, and more recently also to sponsor literary events. And again, we thank them all very, very much. And so we're going to get started. We'll wait for everybody to get their seat. Got to do a hug. There's a hug. There's a hello. There's a handshake. There's another handshake. There's a kiss. No, nothing to be sorry. We'll wait. It's good. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think he's been with us pretty easily over 15 times. Great friend of the Gazebo. Ladies and gentlemen, Lloyd Abrams. They're not going to hear it, but they can hear you. Okay, good.
Good evening. Okay. How is this? Is this reverberate or anything, or is it clear? Okay, good. You might want it to reverberate. Okay. I'm going to read two autobiographical stories about grit and determination. And after living for almost 78 years, that's what's helped me along. Anyway, the first one is called With My Tail Between My Legs. Early in my sophomore year at Stony Brook, I discovered that I wasn't the math genius I thought I was. The myth started when I got a perfect grade on one of Mr. Hertz's 7th grade math tests that I'd finished in 4 minutes and continued with hundreds and near hundreds on 4 New York State math regions and a high mathematics score on my SAT. But when I walked into my first Calculus 3 unit exam on sets and arrays at Stony Brook, I had no idea what I was doing. I was way out of my league. I handed in my blank answer booklet, walked out of class, and across the quad to the administration building. In the registrar's office, I dropped the Calc 3 class and changed my major from mathematics to psychology, mostly because, don't make up your own jokes, mostly because a BA in psychology required only 25 psych credits, far fewer than any other major. That way, I could still graduate in 4 years. And so, by simply signing the change form, waving my magic wand, and commanding abracadabra, I was going to become a psychologist. Yeah. I was never an academic overachiever, someone like my brother Steve, the high school valedictorian and concert pianist. Although I was a top 10% honor student, I rarely studied in high school. And my lackadaisical and witless work ethic hardly changed in college. My mediocre 4-year 2.28 grade point average at Stony Brook got me accepted to only Wichita State University. Yeah, frickin' Kansas. And admitted to the graduate psychology program at Texas Tech College longer before it became a university, but only on a non-matriculated basis. Here's the rough part. Just before my parents left Lubbock, Texas to drive back home, they warned me, don't you dare buy any car until you know where you stand. The next day, I found a tiny Ronaldo fan for $500. Only a car could offer what I needed the most: freedom and independence. I lived in a high-rise dormitory alongside hundreds of freshmen and underclassmen, grad students. I watched drugstore cowboys on Saturday night courting their cowgirls. I got into a fist fight with an anti-Semitic redneck who was subsequently expelled. I smoked my first joint after remaining drug abstinent at Stony Brook, of all places, except for using Dexedrine, an amphetamine from samples my pharmacist father had slipped me for all-night cramming and paper writing. Perhaps my best overall skill was, and still is, being able to rapidly assimilate and process information. And during those days, being able to touch type, mercifully aided by a miracle invention called correct type. Oh boy, lucky that. Day-to-day life in Lubbock was mostly dull, although I started counseling students in the college's mental health clinic. And it was comforting to be able to stop at the all-night donut joint, the only place open 24 hours, and scarf down hot, oily donuts. I also had a short-lived relationship with a townie, an easygoing local girl, but I stopped dating her because she couldn't or wouldn't do anything about her chronic and unavoidable halitosis condition. Try kissing that. One afternoon, Lubbock police detectives met me after class and brought me in for questioning about the grisly murder of a female custodian. It was a big case in 1967 and shocking news at that time. With my goatee, I evidently fit into the general description of the perpetrator. I guess they had searched through the college's ID card photos. Our room was subsequently searched when nothing incriminating, including some pot, was found. Most importantly, I had an airtight alibi, as did my freshman roommate, Randy. We had both attended a KTXT FM staff meeting the previous evening, the evening in question, before I went on the air at midnight for my premier 2-hour broadcast. After 4 months of apathetic studying and aimlessness, and living as a stranger in a strange land in the armpit of the Bible Belt, I still ended up with 3 A's and a B. While my grades alone were evidently not enough to earn matriculation status, perhaps the psychology department decision makers thought I also hadn't met other unspecified qualifications. So with my tail between my legs and a vague sense of relief, I packed up all my belongings in several large cardboard boxes and flew home on a Braniff red-eye. I took a taxi from Kennedy Airport to Jamaica, the Long Island Railroad out to Islip, and another taxi home. When I unlocked the front door and walked unannounced into my parents' bedroom early that morning, I saw their shocked, dumbfounded looks, the faces morphing into disappointment, then sorrow, while I was suffused with anguish, anger, and shame. And feeling so beaten down and exhausted, I had to get some sleep. My mother softened and said, "Go to bed, Lloyd. We'll talk about this later. It'll all work out." Thank you. All true. And I subsequently found out that that murder that happened back in 1967 is still on people's minds in Lubbock. I guess they perseverate a lot. Anyway, and this is called yet another really close call. As we passed Milburn Pond Park in mid-November 2022 on a Saturday afternoon walk, I stopped and leaned against a wrought iron gate. But a hinge was broken and the bottom of the gate swiveled up and struck me just below and to the right of my left knee. Immediately, blood began spurting through my lycra walking tights. Vivian called 911. We were terrified that my being on blood thinner might cause me to bleed out. She helped lower me to the sidewalk, then rolled the stretchy lycra material up and above my knee. Amazingly, the bleeding stopped. Not until later did we realize that the compression of the rope must have acted like a tourniquet. A Freeport police officer appeared in minutes in a Northwell ambulance. I was transported nauseous, a sort of infection. After a much shorter wait than we expected in the emergency room, several lidocaine injections and 10 sutures were needed to close the bite T-shaped wound, followed by a tetanus shot. Then we took an Uber home. We walked into a house with barely enough time to be able to make the 6:21 train into the city for a show on West 20th Street, for which I had already bought tickets. So when I mentioned the possibility of actually going, my lovely wife, she asked, are you effing crazy? In our home sweet home, that's a rhetorical question. Needless to say, that night we watched TV. The next day, we walked a couple of blocks in loose pajama bottoms really slowly, and several more blocks the following day. Although some might have seen my need to get moving as a stubborn determination, I wanted to persevere, to not give in. Within a week, I was walking the same distance, albeit slower than usual. After 13 days, my primary care physician removed the stitches and replaced them with 5 steri strips. It took a lot longer for the injury to more fully heal, and I still had to baby it by covering with gauze when I wear jeans or sweats, or when I pulled on those tights that can rub against the still sensitive area. And I'm still wearing that same pair of Lycra tights, cheap as I am, which of course have since been washed. Despite my being gouged, those hind animal tights weren't even torn, which seemed almost impossible because the gouge opened up a 3-inch gash. And similarly, many years before, when a dog bit my calf when I was pulling a wheat terrier away during a canine altercation, that same brand of tights was neither torn nor punctured, although I needed 5 stitches at that time. I sometimes wonder if I've been living on borrowed time. So far, I've been incredibly lucky because death could come to court anytime and anywhere, like in 1977, when I went down on my motorcycle on the Bell Parkway at 65 miles an hour between 2 lanes. I could have also been run over. I must have been unconscious for quite a long while because I got up and walked to the ambulance, which was already there. In 2007, when I almost slipped off of moistened rocks and could have plummeted into a gorge, I barely got my footing back in time. In 2009, when I had a heart attack a week before the Fibro bike tour, I was supposed to be a lead marshal. It could have happened in a crowd at a pitch point going through Central Park or climbing up the Verrazano Bridge. In 2012, when I was almost hit while riding my bike in the rain by a driver who ran a red light, my bike's hydraulic disc brakes thankfully held. And in 2018, when I blacked out in my kitchen from a bilateral pulmonary embolism before going to one of Barbara Novack's writing workshops, so therefore it's her fault, for a bilateral pulmonary embolism that just as well could have happened someplace else, like when I was driving. And there had been other similar close calls. In the 1977 motorcycle incident, a bungee cord, one of those stretchy things, became dislodged, wrapped around the rear axle, and I went up and over and flat onto the pavement. About the same time, Vivian, my lovely wife from before and still, felt a chill course through her. She believes that God was there to catch me. Reflecting on the recent fence accident, I don't know if anyone could say that his or her life had been saved not only by a forceful 911 call by an anguished spouse and a fast response by first responders, but foremost by the compression from the rolled up leg of a pair of black bicycle tights. And I thank you all.
I saw our insurance premiums skyrocketing. We may have to invest in wireless, I think. All right, listen, everybody. Thank you, Lloyd. Lloyd Abrams, alive and kicking. All right, our next reader runs the creative writing program at the Oceanside Library. He's a long, good friend of the Gazebo, and of all of us, ladies and gentlemen, Barbara Novack. Watch.
Well, this has to be okay. Thank you so much. Okay, like this. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Tony. I have a Father's Day poem, but I'll save it to the end in case I have time. I'm going to start with a Juneteenth poem, which Juneteenth is this Wednesday, and it's called Freedom/Definition. They told you late when they told you. When did it change? Before or when they told you? Are you free if you don't know it, but the rest of the world does? Are you free if the rest of the world says you're not? Can you be free in your heart? I can't tell your story, but I can appreciate it. I can learn from it. It rises up, notes of song that fall sparkling to faces, reflecting tears, reflecting years, rivulet-worn etchings of history's arc. I can't tell your story, but I can appreciate it. I can learn from it. I can reflect with you, rejoice with you. The world can define only so much. Freedom must be felt. Thank you. Thank you very much. This next poem is called Some Words for Soon. I misread the title of the poem. It was about snow. I thought it was about soon, some words for it. But are there some words for it? There are more for snow. Soon is close and almost and near now, but not yet. The parabola that never reaches the axis, the tension of that, the taut tightrope between the windows of when, where, someone below probably hoping you fall just for the excitement of it. There is no edge to soon. It is merely an unreachable goal. And what are the words for that? Thank you. This next one, I fell in January and lacerated my chin. And while I was in the hospital waiting for it to be stitched, of course, I wrote a poem. And it's called Bleeding. I take my photo bleeding in the hospital, waiting for stitches in my lacerated chin. A fall. The aches will come later, the knees, hands, shoulders. Now I bleed. I bleed onto the gauze taped to my chin. I take a photo to send to my friends. Here I am at the hospital. This is what I look like, bleeding. I take a photo and text it thinking, actually, I don't look too bad. No wrinkles, and I do like those cheekbones. Thank you. This one's called Running Shoes Adagio. I should call this Adidas Adagio because it sounds better, but I wear Nikes and I don't run. Not like that. Not a runner like that, like the grim people I see along the road I drive to work every day, hot or cold, sunny or raining, even in snow, pumping away, sweating. I don't like to sweat or breathe too hard. I'll walk if you don't mind. I'll get there, wherever there is. There is a there, no matter what Gertrude Stein said. I dance my dance. It isn't fancy or graceful. It can be mistaken for walking, but running shoes give it a bounce. I turn and swirl, swing a cape I don't have, toss a scarf I don't wear, move to music only I hear. It's simple, easier than you would think. Just buy the neon green ones, the purple and black ones, the pink ones, the orange ones, the lime yellow and baby blue. Light your feet, flame them, they'll dance on their own. Laces tied or flapping, take you with them on their journey. Walk, take your time. Only holy grace matters, not necessary to sweat. Thank you. And this next one is called Conundrum. Why do paper clips always link into relationship with each other? Tangled and twined, out of the box, in the tray, on my desk. An affinity I don't understand. A connection of kind that I'm sure suggests more than it is, though I don't know why I should be so sure since I don't understand it in the first place, or the second, or the third. There are 3, 4, 5 linked now, tangled truly since last I looked. They are active, these paper clips, like rabbits in the dark. Connecting, reproducing connection, being more, becoming more. Insidious they are, possibly dangerous, colluding as they do, conspiring, plotting. What do they have against me? All I want to do is get the pieces of my life together without the permanence of glue. Thank you. Okay, this next one is called What Do You Do with the Crazy? What do you do with the crazy when it wraps around you like smoke, curls its fingers between your layers, stroking and stoking the fire? What do you do with the tingles like too much caffeine in your toes, in your fingers that tap to the conga? What do you do with the subterranean current, rippling insanity beneath placid surfaces? Calm as artifice, calm as performance. Smiles, sometimes rictus of keeping the crazy in. What do you do with the crazy that twists you and braids you and turns you upon yourself tighter than you knew even crazy could do? What do you do with the crazy when it wears you down to a nub? You take that nub and scribble, and maybe the crazy braids with soul, and maybe with them together, you scribble your way whole. Okay, thank you. And this next poem, well, I was inspired by an interview that I heard with Mandy Patinkin and his wife, Catherine Grodin, on NPR. It was about their marriage. And she said, he told me he wanted me to be the body in the other room. I was insulted. Now, after all these years, I'm happy to be the body in the other room. It means the person you know will be there, who won't leave. And the poem is called Love Is. Love is not being alone, knowing someone will be there, having someone to remember with and forget with, being silent, not having to entertain, being together in this room or another. Love is disagreeing, but knowing you cannot be apart, arguing, but knowing the oneness of two. Love is knowing there's still magic even after all these years. Love is remembering what was in what is and sharing what will be. Thank you. And the next poem, I'm working on a new book and I'm thinking that this will be the title poem. And it's called The Way Home. Amid the debris, clutter that flutters in the breeze of lives that left, of doors opened for them, never closed for me. On this threshold, past to future, I stand in the now, feeling its boundaries, the walls, floor, ceiling of this space, a hallway perhaps, a way between, a way from, to, but still a nowhere unless I move. Home was there in the was of us, not here in the singular is. Not in the will be either without a way. There is none in the gone. Here is merely interim. Now passes into another now, another now. Home could be where I am. Home could be where I go. Home could be what I do. The way is what I see when I no longer look back. Thank you. And the next one, if I can get the papers. Okay, the next one is in honor of the summer solstice, which is coming up very, very soon. And it's called Balance of the Summer Solstice. In the seesaw of time and being, rarely is there the evenness of balance, where each side rests comfortably, yin and yang, sliding back and forth on the smooth surface of light being light, and of light, sliding back and forth on the smooth surface of light being dark and dark being light, each folding into the other. Or perhaps they retain their separateness, keeping a line between light as light, dark as dark. Perhaps that helps us understand each better, seeing each as its own being, in its own time, revealing their curious distinction juxtaposed. So the solstice retains the balance, and the distinction, and the curiosity, for the moment is fleeting, and summer, where we seek the languor of the longer days, is merely illusion, for the days shorten beneath our beach towels, as the world shifts beneath our sand-filled shoes, and the blue sky indigos before we know. But day is still day, and night still night, and neither rests as comfortably against each other as they do in our moments of balance, rare as they are, in the seesaw of time and being, when we can slide easily on time's smooth surface, simply being simply. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Barbara. Barbara Novack. And as always, we thank the school district. This is school district property, and we're delighted that we have our superintendent of schools, Dr. Phyllis Harrington, with us tonight. And our board president and several board members are here as well. We appreciate them coming over and spending some time with us. Our next reader tonight is, he's been here all 18 years. He's one of our favorites. Without any further ado, Tom Phelan. Nonsense. All right, sir.
Okay. Well, I'd like to thank Tony and Angela and all their support people for doing this every year and getting some children to camp who would never otherwise get there. And I'm going to read from the Canal Bridge, and it is about set in the First World War. And the person speaking in this chapter, her name is Kitty. And Kitty is waiting for her boyfriend to come home from the war. Her brother Con has already been killed in the war. The two of them, Matthias and Con, went together. And Matthias is on his way home, but nobody knows exactly when he's going to get there because this was back in 1918. So this is Kitty Hatchell speaking. The heart in my chest jumped when I heard Sonny Mac shouting in his thin voice from the Canal Bridge, "Kitty, Kitty, Kitty." It was a Saturday afternoon. I was just after dipping the scrubbing brush into the basin to start on the last chair outside the back door. There were soap bubbles on my knuckles and fingers. Kitty, Kitty, Kitty. Even though I knew for a certainty it was Sonny, and even though I knew for a certainty why he was calling me, I still ran to the corner of the house and looked. And Sonny was there, exactly where I knew he'd be standing on the parapet in the center of the bridge, his two hands cupping his mouth, his head bent back, and he throwing out my name with all his might. Kitty, Kitty, Kitty. I thought I'd have a heart attack. The instant Sonny saw me seeing him, saw me jumping up and down like a mad frog with its front legs over its head, he shouted, "He's this side of Corcoran's." I waved and he waved and stepped off the parapet, disappeared, and I knew Sonny was already on his way, running barefooted, betattered and bespattered, back along the tow path to the harbor, so he could tell everyone in school he was there when Matthias Wren came back to Ballyranal after walking home from the war, and that he'd been on the lookout for a month, and that Kitty Hatchell had paid him tuppence, with a promise of another tuppence if he got word to her before Matthias reached the harbor. And I came back to myself and found myself standing there, my finger in my mouth, and Mammy at the kitchen door asking, was there someone? Mom, he's home, Matthias, oh, Mom. And I burst out crying and fell down on my knees beside the rose bush and put my hands to my face and bawled as if I'd been told that Matthias had been killed in France, sobbed like I did when the army letter came about Con. I bent down until the top of my forehead was on the ground and my hair got caught in the rose bush, but I didn't know that till Mammy started lifting me to my feet, and she had to run into the kitchen to get the scissors to cut the strands in the thorns. She brushed the flower bed soil off my forehead, told me to wash my face before I put on the dress that Mrs. Hodgkins gave me so I'd look nice if Matthias came home on a Saturday afternoon or on a Sunday. I fled in through the kitchen and into the room and ripped off my old work apron. I was pulling on Sarah Hodgkins' dress, the color of bee stings with drops of blood in it, when I realized Mam had followed and that she was wringing her hands and crying, and I knew she was crying for Matthias being home and for Con not being home. Oh, Mam, I squeaked, and I put my arms around her, and the two of us sobbed and sobbed, and we kept sobbing even when we heard Daddy shouting from the yard, "Did you hear? Did you hear?" And when we heard his boots in the kitchen, Mom pushed me away and said, "Kitty, you have to wipe your face before you let Matthias see you, before you let Dad see you." "Did you hear?" Daddy called from the doorway. I dipped into my wash basin and scooped cupped hands of water onto my face. Mom was holding the flour sack towel for me, and after wiping her own face in it before Daddy saw her. "It looks like you heard," Daddy said. Mom waited until she had cleared the sticky strings of crying out of her throat before she spoke. "Run your fingers through your hair," she said to me, and to Daddy she said, "Get out of the door, James, or she'll knock you down." But I didn't run past Daddy because I had to bring him into my happiness. I put my arms around his neck, my head on his chest. "I'm terribly glad, Kitty," he said, and he stroked my hair. But then he couldn't help himself. "Poor Con," he blurted out in a shower of tears, and I felt the pain in his heart. Then he whispered, "Poor Con, poor Con. Run, Kit, run, Kit. We'll be all right. Run," he said, and he pushed me away and turned me towards the kitchen door. And I ran and ran and ran, but Con's tears kept up with me, and Daddy's and Mammy's tears kept up with me, and I knew they were holding each other in a whirlpool of sadness and gladness for Con and Matthias. With my face full forward, I ran along the canal bank, and I heard the keening sounds of Mam Dog running to her hungry pups. I heard the sounds of bewildered sow looking for the place where her piglets squeal in fear of a knife. And I heard a fierce clucking of a hen when she sees a remembered shadow in the sky and her chicks are all scattered all over. And all these sounds of fretful mamness were keening out through my own tight lips. I ran onto the coping stones at the harbor, still keeping the sounds of the anxious animal, searching for a glimpse of the family member it believed had been lost forever. A gap opened in the circle of people surrounding Matthias, and there he was in his cloth cap, the peak broken in the middle and it pointing to the sky like the beak of a bittern. In my forward lunge, I was stunned by the sight of him, so skeletal, head all skull, unfocused eyes deep in sockets. But he was Matthias home, with jacket over his left shoulder and canvas bag hanging out of his right hand. His collarless shirt was unbuttoned. I recovered from the stumble and flew off the ground, attached myself to him with such force that someone stepped forward and kept him from falling backward, and everyone cheered. But in that split second, before jumping and landing, I had been stricken in the heart every bit as much as if I'd run at full gallop onto the blunt wooden handle of a plow in the dark. I knew before my arms were around his neck that this was not my Matthias who'd gone away to war. This Matthias did not drop his short coat and bag and squeeze me. He didn't twirl me around in a dance of mad gladness. He didn't shout and cry and bite my ears and devour my face and run his fingers through my hair and feel the shape of my skull. He didn't shout out. He didn't say anything. And I knew that this absence of greeting was part of what I had not seen in his eyes. And I was bewildered. And then I was disappointed, terribly wounded. A storm of feelings swept through me, and I thought I was going to lose control, become a blathering idiot in front of this audience. All the nighttime terrors that I'd buried, all the fears and hopes that I'd pushed behind a dam in my head, and all the imaginings of the last 4 years came washing over me like a brown flood, roaring down the narrow, onus river, washing everything before it after a week's rain in the Peaty Mountains. And through the roar of the flood, I heard for the first time the words Mrs. Hodgkins had said to me 100 times. You must prepare yourself, Kitty. There are more ways of getting killed in a war than by bullets. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Tom Phelan. All right, the schedule for the next 2 weeks. Next week, Linda Kleinbub, Emily Sue Sloan, Valerie Griggs, and Barbara Southard. And the week after that, we have our Independence Day readings and barbecue. Has anybody not been to our Independence Day readings and barbecue? Has everybody been to them? No, we have some that haven't. All right, so just so that you know, we go off script. I print out the Declaration of Independence and a whole bunch of historical readings. Our good friend Judy hands them out. Everybody gets, whoever wants to read gets a page, and then we do that. Plus, we have a barbecue, so it's all free. It's really a great time. We may have some music this year, so we're really looking forward to it. Our next reader, our final reader for tonight, the former Nassau County Poet Laureate, and as I always say, and I did because I want to make sure that he knows how much it means. When I first thought of this and pitched it to Kiwanis, I said we're going to do every Monday night, June, July, and August, 13 weeks. And Angela said, well, why don't we do 1 week? And I said, no, we do every week, 13 weeks. But no poets. Under no circumstances, I don't want any poets. And that's a longer story, but I wanted no poets. And then I got about 3 weeks before the start, and I had sold sponsorships, and we had nobody reading. We had like 5 people reading for the entire summer. And I wound up out in Southampton on a Sunday night for the opening of a book, of the new readings from a new poetry book. Happened to sit next to our next reader. I listened to the poetry and I said, "Oh, this is much nicer than the garbage that I was listening to in Manhattan and a prior event." And so it was great. And I said, "Peter, can you come and read?" And he said, "Sure." And with him and Judy and George Wallace, and all of a sudden we started to catch on. And of course, that I like to keep saying it because I don't know how much longer we're going to be able to say it. But that first year, we had Ada Limon read here, our now current U.S. Poet Laureate. And the library is looking to get her back when we open up the new building to see if we can't get her to come and read for us. So without any further ado, that's long enough. Peter Dugan, who also, by the way, as he's walking up here, runs the poetry program at the Oceanside Library.
All right. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Kiwanis. Thank you, Oceanside Library. And thank all of you for coming out. For many years, we've been doing this. And I'm going to give a little plug first. This Saturday, Oceanside Library is going to have a reading at 2 o'clock. It's an open mic, but Barbara will be reading for us, Barbara Novack. So come on down. And now my second plug is my book. It's like a greatest hits. It's called Something Wicked, Something American. You get it on Amazon. You can go to Barnes and Noble, but it's going to be print on demand. They're going to tell you that. But I'm reading from the proof. So figured what got me started. Hey, Bobby, you're overdressed. Suit, tie, jacket, and a carnation. I almost didn't recognize you without your leather. Do you feel out of place? I see you're packed and ready to go. Leather jacket, ratty cutoff, and your cap, all folded neatly on the side. Beer, Jack Daniels, and cigarettes right next to you. Pictures of your wife, your kids, and your bike. All the things you liked, loved, and lived for, crammed inside a box. Are you going to miss them? Hey, Bobby, it's a going away party. The guys are giving you a toast, wishing you a safe ride, while the girls sit crying with your family. They miss you already, but you remain silent. I thought you liked parties. How does it feel to be the guest of honor? Well, I have to say goodbye now. I wish you could stay longer. It won't be the same without you. You chose to live hard, die fast. I'll miss you, Bobby. Do you think there are bikes wherever you're going? I wrote that, and Denise Levitor said it's one of only 2 poems that she's read lately that is true poetry. And I said, really? And I was like, okay. I got that. That was inspired by Allen Ginsberg, and I had to write it the day after I went to my friend's wake. But that led to other motorcycle poems, and this one was nominated for a Pushcart Prize. And Judy Turek gets a little credit for this because the title was actually the last line of the poem. And she said, make it the title. So Jesus never rode a Harley. High school boys, preppies, greasers, and jocks, young punks, artists, and hipsters, driving fast cars, motorcycles, and pickup trucks, explore boundaries, test limits, and color outside the lines. Feral youth on the prowl, adolescents racing to shed their virginity, a noxious alchemy of teenage counterculture fusion, flutter like moths in search of firelight, a crazy-eyed collage of shade and color, a salty dialogue peppered with four-letter words, the outlaw, the outcast, and the outlandish, rebellious, independent, something wicked, something American. Standing still, they beckon for the open road. They are the wildflowers filled with the funk of cigarette smoke, mixed with the stench of stale beer, dressed in only skivvies, slipping, sliding, and tumbling, hacking, slashing, and slicing through the jungle and jumble. No past, no future, only now. The freedom to be wild and the freedom to be left alone, suffering from the unbearable heat of being cool. Taking a wild rock and roll ride with psychedelics scattered like gravel on the highway, the broken white lines blend into one, the string of lies tangled with knots of truth, a biological function, a chemical reaction, a mathematical equation, outlaw cool and offbeat wild. Do you feel out of place? Thank you. Moving right. All right, here's another good one. Mile Zero. This is the brink of America, the alpha and the omega, where US 1 begins or ends. Time becomes irrelevant. The sun rises without need or rush. Roosters crow from dawn to dusk. Crystal clear, warm waters call out to swimmers, sailors, snorkelers, and fishermen. Sunset is celebrated with a toast of thanks for another eve of the everyday holiday. Ghosts of artists and authors, poets and pirates, privateers and presidents, drunk and hungover from a life in paradise, haunt the bars, roam the streets, and wander the harbor walk of Old Town late at night. Others sit and wait for Papa at Sloppy Joe's while six-toed cats lounge at home. Beneath the shade of palm trees, I lie in a hammock, contemplating the chicken, the road, and the egg. But this is Key West, so who cares? Here's the first poem that ever got officially published in a magazine. The idea was that it's Farmingdale State College now. It was SUNY Farmingdale back then. And it's called Autumn Twilight. They were going to publish, they wanted to publish Jesus Never Rode a Harley, but they thought it was too dark. And I was like, what? Okay. So I gave them Autumn Twilight. A pair of geese glide silently on the waters as the moon and stars shimmer on the ripples of Mill River. Cool, crisp air carries the fragrance of pine needles and the scent of smoke from a distant fire. The old willow stands on the riverbank, naked, stripped of its leaves. A skeleton of bark and branches, scarred and gnarled, a ghostly apparition, shuddering and bending in the wind. Still, it endures, rooted to the ground. I feel my age. My hair is gray, standing alone on the river's edge, wrapped in the mist, wafting through the cattail reeds, watching summer's dead leaves drift away. Let's see what I got. All right, we're gonna have the solstice this week, and this one's called the haunted solstice. This is what happens when you get bored and you have nothing to write about, and maybe you smoke the joints. Maybe. say, it's impossible, but haunted solstice. Just before you doze off to sleep, you hear them outside the window in the garden on a hot summer night. A band of nomadic gnomes known as the yellow-bellied scuttlebutts. Two musical morticians who play the razzmatazz jazz of real hepcat banjoists and hipster harmonicas. Dressed in their trademark off-color chinchilla jackets, iridescent nightwear, and Ramadan noodle loafers, they intermingle the newest passion of fashion with their makeshift inversions of discordant notes that taunt and tease, the frenzy of scattered words, a fast shuffle of changing phases and turning phrases. A cacophony of mixed melodies evoke a sense of remorse and revved up rebuke as rows of daffodils evaporate in the light of electrified moonshine, amid ghosts of the aroused void, new and frightening deformed creatures, monsters spawned by imagination and fear, crawl out of the muck of one's mind to bask in the shadows cast by the mist that shrouds the haloed moon. There will be no sleep tonight. Okay, moving on. Let's see it. Anybody want to hear another motorcycle poem? Okay, after this one. Parochial. The faithful flock to the cathedrals, churches, and chapels, bookstores, cafes, and schools. Take their seats, fill the pews, listen, and recite the word. Outside on the street, those starving for faith congregate as heretics and apostates shout out blasphemy. Poetry is dead! While true believers retort, there is resurrection. But everyday agnostics and atheists pass by, deaf to the debate, wrapped up by the incessant rhythm and rhyme of pop culture sublime that blurs the line between art and entertainment. They are blind to the figured wheel that rolls down the road through the meadow and out into the wasteland over the decayed stone wall, where an old black hearse without gilt or polish lies buried in the high grass next to a red wheelbarrow. At night, you can hear the howl of the wind bellow and echo through coffee shops, poetry vaults, and library basements. Here, converts, novices, and deacons still toil down catacombs, creating poems from old poets' bones. Language becomes image. The word is among us. We bear witness to it here. And we're all poets because the shamans of art and science exploit general relativity and quantum mechanics as they play with complex quadratic polynomials, the process of becoming a universe in itself. Seeking God by defining pi while hooked on phonics is still just another slice of a circular motion, a Mandelbrot fractal, a piece of Android inkblot Orwellian kiwi fruit with overstated axle comma areas that rankle G-string theory canons tied together by the repetition of limited infinite use of molecular words, the ordered structure of chaos on the predictably random stages of movement, both physical and spiritual, reaches the domain and range of matter and antimatter, the real and the surreal, instinct and emotion, intellect and imagination, from solid, liquid, gas, and plasma, all the omniscient granite of infatuated nobility of the down and out old budsmen, old masters who browbeat a time bomb of budsmen as unbaked, unabashed, and unwashed. My eyes are going postmodernist, accept the square root of -1 to find the product, quotient, and power of writing a poem. Okay. Where is it? Where is it? All right. We all want to hear this one. Where is it? The Gray Pilgrim. Operating on instinct rather than intellect. I pull up to the gas pump in need of coffee as much as my car needs fuel. A casualty of a late night and early morning, I linger in the misty twilight of dreams and reality as I saunter toward the entrance of the 24-hour convenience store. Parked on the side, I noticed an old biker readying his motorcycle for the day's travel. I recognize him immediately. A hometown boy, born and bred on Long Island, matured in Brooklyn, and now he sleeps in New Jersey. He's a sojourner who has crisscrossed the country countless times, chronicling and cataloging the people, places, and things he's encountered, from New York to San Francisco, Daytona to Sturgis, Chicago to New Orleans, Boston to Los Angeles, the big cities, the small towns, and all the villages, hamlets, and whistle stops found in between. To some, he's an eccentric renegade filled with purposeless wanderlust. As for myself and others, he is a maverick, a rebel, a hero who celebrates his freedom. He is all American and he is ageless. Spry for his years, rough-hewn with lean, wiry frame, his face taut like rough-weathered leather beneath a long gray beard creased with the lines of many miles and many years. He's dressed in a tan deerskin duster with fringes and faded blue jeans. On his head, he wears stars and stripes bandana to keep his bushy silver white hair in place. His bike is an expression of himself, dusty but not dirty from the road. The engine, a big V-twin, sits mounted on a monoshock soft-tail frame with a fat bob gas tank and teardrop fenders painted electric blue and highlighted with red and white pinstripes. A cool, rigid look, fine-tuned by a low-slung saddle seat with a passenger pad and an old long rucksack tied to the small sissy bar. The pullback handlebars and wide front end that rolls on foam spoke wheels gives the impression of constant motion. It has retro classic style for a long, easy ride. Standing still, it beckons for the open road. It is a machine to epitomize the power and prestige of America. He mounts the bike, starts it up, and roars the open road. A resounding thunder shatters the silence of the new morning. The fringes of his jacket give the appearance of wings, an eagle gliding on the wind. Walt Whitman rides a Harley Davidson. Thank you. Peter Dugan. All right, everybody. Great night. A little windy. Hey, we've had worse in June. As I always say, the poets made June sound like it's a great month. It really isn't. It's an easy one to rhyme. Tonight's $25 goes to Lloyd. I'm not running away, Lloyd. I'll bring it to you in a second. The other tickets that go into the grand prize drawing at the end of the summer: Munchkin, Herb Faust, Barbara Novack, and Peter Dugan. And I'll give you an extra one because it is a little windy tonight. And that's Barbara Novack again. Thank you, everybody. Hope to see you next week. Young ladies right there. Come on up. Thank you, everybody.